Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, stories, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out the articles, videos, and more at passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, join the community forum, and of course, attend the weekly online Global Passive House Happy Hour. Now, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh. I'm coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Semke, and I'm coming to you from Seattle in Washington.
And putting aside events of the last few days, and in fact, when your interview for today's episode was recorded, I understand was a interesting day, not just for America but for the world. I think
it was.
We're going to focus on the good and the great things that are happening in the building industry today, as we always do on this podcast. And it's fantastic to hear from some really inspiring people, which you did this week, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a chance to talk with Lois Arena, and Lois is one of North America's top passive house practitioners. She's got a hand in many of the continent's most significant passive house buildings. She's spoken at the Accelerator's Global Passive House Happy Hour before, and she's going to be returning on January 20th to speak about lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid with VRF systems in multifamily projects, which I think is going to be super interesting. She's Director of Passive House Services with Stephen Winthrop Associates. She's got a Master's of Science in Civil, Environmental, and Architectural Engineering from University of Colorado in Boulder. She's a professional engineer and a certified passive house consultant, both through FIAS and PHI. She's also got a really interesting background in remodeling contracting as well, and has been involved in building engineering research. And she touches on that in our conversation. So we spoke about her journey to passive house, hurdles to passive house adoption and how to overcome them, cool passive house projects she has on the books right now. And we also got a little teaser about the VRF intel that I mentioned that she's going to share with us.
You better just tell us quickly what VRF is, Zach, for those that don't know.
Yeah. So it's variable refrigerant flow, and she'll be talking about, she'll explain it in the presentation, but it's a heating and cooling technology that is well suited to larger projects. So she'll share a little bit with us and kind of tease her January 20th appearance.
Awesome.
So please enjoy. Lois, thank you for joining us for the Passive House podcast. It's so great to have you here and to get a chance to interview you. And we're also really looking forward to your happy hour presentation on January 20th as well. So this is a great kind of 1-2 punch. I'm going to dive right in, and so today you're the Director of Passive House Services at Stephen Winthrop Associates, and you have a hand in many of the most significant passive house projects in North America. Before that, you were a remodeling contractor, right?
True. Right before I joined Stephen Winthrop Associates, yes, I was. And from South Quebec, yeah.
Yeah, and you also earned your MS in Civil Engineering at University of Colorado. So tell me about this journey.
Oh, interesting. I was working in Colorado after I got my degree, and was in building systems and energy efficiency and renewable energy and all that. And so I was working for the Energy Rated Homes program there. I was a technical resource for them. I was helping train their raters and evaluate the software and things like that. And I got so tired of builders telling me that nobody wanted energy efficiency and, that sort of stuff. They couldn't sell it. In bad times, they told me, well, it's too tight. We can't add anything else to the house. And in good times when the market was flourishing, they're like, we don't need it. We don't need it to sell. We can sell anything. So I was so tired of hearing all the excuses. So I thought, you know what, I'm so sick of this. I'm going to do this on my own and see if I can't sell this stuff. So I started to buy existing buildings that were in really bad shape. I got on that foreclosure market and all that stuff. And I started to put in all the green features, insulation, high efficiency energy equipment, and things like that, that most flippers don't normally do, right? Usually it's a paint upgrade to the kitchen and you go. So I was doing that for about 10 years in Colorado and in Connecticut, when I moved back to Connecticut. And then the market crashed in 2008.
I remember.
I have an engineering degree. Let's see what we can do with this. So
right.
Contacted Stephen Winter Associates, and they hired me right away. Two other individuals from that particular program at CU actually worked here at the time. So they were sort of well trained for this position in here at this company. And I was actually working as a research engineer for quite a while for the Building America program, doing applied research. So we would go into homes, we would recommend better ways to do production building, like 30% better than code. That's what our goal was.
Right.
And while I was doing that, we started to get calls for Passive House in 2010. So I came here in 2007. In 2010, within 2 weeks, we probably got 3 different calls that asked if we could do Passive House modeling. So I started to look into it. I was like, well, of course we can do modeling, energy modeling. And I looked into it and I said, Stephen, we need to get trained. I need to be certified in this. And he looked at it and he was like, Jesus, $2,500. It's three 3-day sessions up in Boston. So my time off, hotel, all the expenses. And I was like, I think we need to do this. And so we got certified. And right after I got certified, we got our first Passive House project, which is the Eco Village project up in Ithaca, New York. And he loves to tell people now that I prove him wrong every step of the way, that just shuts up now and listens to me. But so now at this point, we have a group of 10 people we're hiring. We'll probably have 13 by the end of 2021. And our niche is sort of large scale, never been done Passive House projects. We keep like, what's the next big thing that we want to apply Passive House to? So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's interesting how that the recession kind of is a beginning point for so many folks in Passive House. I think just the disruption that it created in lives, and kind of trying to figure out how to be creative, and then also the timing of the arrival of Passive House in North America sort of coincided in an interesting way. I mean, my background is totally different from yours, but my introduction to Passive House was also instigated by the recession
really?
Back then. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. No, my pivot to do marketing at Hammer in Hand was that the recession kind of created that change for me, and that's how I got introduced to this world. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So you have, given where you're at in the kind of scale of projects, and you mentioned the never been done before kind of aspect of your work in the Passive House world, you have a really unique perspective. So on the Passive House scene. So from your perspective, what are the key hurdles, technical or otherwise, to widespread adoption of Passive House in big projects here? And how do we overcome those?
So one of the big hurdles that we have are supply chain issues, right? So for large scale projects, we're looking at curtain walls, right, that don't have the level of efficiency of the curtain walls that you can get in Europe. We can get good stuff, and we're pushing the manufacturers who do the big stuff to work with us and improve those every day. So we're looking at supply chain issues there. Still a little bit on the aluminum just punched window side of things, for large scale projects that need certain wind and water ratings and fire ratings. We're still a little bit lagging in that. We have a few more options than we did when we first started, but it still would be good if we had more options. Large scale ERVs that have good efficiency and that have been tested to the standard that Passive House would like to be tested. And I'm going to say something that's probably not going to please the people in the Passive House community, but reluctance to change from the certifier's perspective, from the large scale, the people who run the programs, reluctance to change, reluctance to make a quick decision. It's very, very hard to say, I have this new building type that has never been certified before, and get them to answer you in any sort of timely manner. And we're trying to change that. We're working with North American Passive House Network, and we're working with the certifiers in particular But until we can come up with guidelines for here's how you handle this particular type, let's just say office space. Here's your guidelines on how to do office space. But getting those guidelines out of them where they feel comfortable has been really difficult, very slow. Let me say it's not been difficult, it's been slow. Mm-hmm. So if we can't come up with more sets of guidelines for that, like laboratory, commercial kitchen, things like the hotel, we just need guidelines that we can share with everybody. So the consultants know, we're kind of bottlenecked right now, where every unique project has to go directly to PHI, get Orpheus and get their stamp on it. And I understand that, right? They don't want to reduce the efficiency of the standard. They don't want to make a bad product, but there needs to be a faster way.
Right. Really, I mean, given that you're on the bleeding edge, you're you're creating problems every day for the certifying bodies.
We are
right?
problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. Problematic. Good problems. It's a good trouble.
I'm a big yeller.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that it makes what you're describing makes a lot of sense in terms of where we're at. I mean, there's just so much new work that's going on, mm-hmm. and then trying to figure out, for the certification bodies, figuring out how to kind of absorb that and evolve and do that quickly. I can see that would be challenging. So what, in terms of, overcoming barriers to adoption, what are there other things that you would like to see happen in the Passive House community, or maybe in the policy arena? What are where do you see log jams that could be what's the metaphor? What do you do with a log jam? You get through a log jam? You clear a log jam?
You clear a log
jam.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Tim McDonald always talks about what's the term he uses? You kind of go upstream and like he did with the QAPs, mm-hmm. One leg sort of changed this whole flow of Passive House.
The QAP, just for listeners, is the policy that he helped spearhead in Pennsylvania around the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency that helped incentivize Passive House projects for affordable housing.
Affordable housing, that's exactly right. And other states followed. It was a massive change. It was a massive change for Passive House and affordable housing. What I think we need is something like that on the market rate side as well. Like I keep thinking, people go in, do they ask for Energy Star appliances? We all know that phrase. How do we get the public to know this phrase? I think that's a really big side we're missing. The public doesn't know to ask. Our affordable housing builders know more about it now, and it's sort of becoming more of a thing in that community. But I love when I go someplace and somebody says, well, I've never heard of Passive House before. And I'm like, okay, now I'm in front of the right group. When we go to our conferences and things like that, where we're all talking to each other and we're sharing information and we're sharing ideas, that's great, really useful. But how do we get to the people that don't know about it? Like, that's sort of a thing too. Like, we're trying to say, okay, how do we get to conferences that universities hold? Mm-hmm. How do we get to conferences that hotel carriers hold, or office developers? Like, how do we get into their sites? And like I said, the general public, how do we get that brand name? How do we get it?
Yeah. It's not exactly what you're describing, but the kind of letter grade display that's going on in New York now for the energy performance of buildings could be an entree to that. What do you think?
I think that's a really good point. I know we've had a few of our new Passive House projects. We run the energy score, and or the energy grade and the energy score, right? There's a bunch of different things, and they're A buildings, right? And the Energy Star score is like a 99, something like that. So if we could equate that in people's heads, Passive House level or something like that, I think we need to associate with something that people know and that mm-hmm. makes their brains, right?
Yeah. Like the grade I think it sort of raises questions. So then people are looking for, okay, well, if my building is an F, what needs to happen? How does that change? How do we change that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe then Passive House can be part of the answer. It's going to be, I think we're in for some interesting a couple of years, I think, with hopefully with new policy opportunities. So it'll be, from the federal level, knock on wood. So
Yeah.
this will be a rapidly evolving landscape, I hope. So how about a cool new project? What's on the boards for you right now?
New projects that we've got. I think the retrofits, we have a really cool, I talked about it on the happy hour a few months ago, was the historic retrofit of a hotel in Connecticut that they're going for Passive House Net Zero, LEED Platinum. And, really great that historic building could even get to that level, So that one's really exciting. The owner, who is the architect as well, is just jazzed about it. Like, he's so psyched to do it. So that's a really fun project.
And that's the Pirelli building, right? Which
exactly.
is, it's super distinctive architecturally as well. So it's going to be fun to see that.
Some people hate it,
Yeah.
I just think that the fact that you can't touch the facade, right, it sort of ties our hand. So that's okay.
Right.
But,
right.
They're doing a wonderful job. That's a really exciting project. I have to say, Winthrop Square in Boston with Millennium Partners, that one's still really amazing to me because, they're in construction now. The curtain wall should start going up, I believe, in March. I don't want to put Brad's feet to the fire under anything if I have to in a few weeks, but I think that's the last we heard. And so, that was one of those big curtain wall projects that we worked very closely with the manufacturer on, and they were great. Soda wall. And so, they're doing a great job, and the whole team's been collaborating on how to make this project work from a thermal perspective, and it's really been eye-opening.
We'll have to share links to photos of these two projects. You can't imagine two projects that look more different.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Winthrop Square is a sleek glass tower, and the Pirelli building is this kind of brutalist exemplar. Yeah.
Right. I know that is very fun. And we've got, some fun stuff. Like, we have a new potential project, another dorm type, like the Cornell, the house. It's residential housing. It's not necessarily dorm, but it might actually use a mega panel again. We haven't used a mega panel since we did the house on Roosevelt Island. So it'd be interesting to learn from our mistakes from that one, and apply them to the new and help bring down costs and speed and stuff like that. So
can you give a little more background about the mega panel?
Sure. So Cornell Tower on Roosevelt Island is student housing for Cornell, the graduate school on Roosevelt Island. It's a tech school. And so the tower is a 26-story tower that was wrapped with mega panel, the panels are 30-foot wide by a 9-foot tall, and they hang off the edge of the slab.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they had to be barged to the site because it's on that island in the middle of the river, right? And they went up by crane and they just hung on the building. And one of the main reasons that there's a couple of reasons the team wanted to go thermally, would wrap the whole building, wouldn't have all those slab edge losses and things like that. But speed and quality control, right? So whenever you do something in a factory, quality control is really good typically. And then those panels go up fairly fast. It started at the end of March and it was completely dried in 26 stories by the beginning of September of that same.
Yeah.
So, all the other trades could be inside working, and the windows were installed in the factory as well. So super airtight and, really well done. But we had a few setbacks here and there and extra work that had to be done inside that we didn't really realize when we started. And so, we hope to learn a lot from, and I'm really be interested to talk to Eastern to see that was the panel manufacturer for the house, what they've done differently and, what they do now that's different from what they did for us back then. So,
yeah. It's these opportunities to do something a second time or a third time or a 10th time or 100th time. It's super exciting to watch what develops, the kind of the innovation that develops, the kind of efficiencies that develop. And that's what ultimately, whether we're talking about, solar panels or passive house buildings, it's the same dynamics at work. Yeah.
That's great. And we have several developers that are they've just adopted passive house as their go-to, right? And so basically affordable developers, but like Hudson has said, where we can, we want to do passive house. We want to do LEED Gold, and we have a Dakota Partners, and we do a lot of affordable with. They just keep replicating the same systems. They're like they see speed and design ease. They've got it down. They've got the details down now. They've got the systems down, operation and maintenance. So they're just reproducing these details and these systems, and our costs come down because we're working with experienced developers now. So like, it's really exciting to be able to give people discounts for that. I'm like, oh, you get the repeat customer discount now,
right.
And we're working with how many people that are repeat? The engineer, the contractor. I'm like, it's cake.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good story. So I know that you have about 1 million things to do, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But I would love to on this kind of topic of innovation and lessons learned and tweaking. You're going to be talking about VRF systems and some challenges and potential solutions at your happy hour presentation that's coming up. Can you do a little teaser about that? I don't want to reveal too much because I'm hoping that lots of folks will join us at the happy hour. But I'd love to share a bit.
Absolutely. So the VRF systems can be installed as heat pumps or as what they call energy recovery systems. And so in heat pump mode, you are switching the condenser from cooling to heating at a certain time of year. That's it. In energy recovery mode, I can use heating when I want, and my neighbor can use cooling at the same time because there's an extra loop of refrigerant. And so we switch the heat in the system. I take the heat for heating, and I can give them, take their heat, and they can use cooling. So there's an efficiency in that system. A lot of times that system is VE'd out, and because it's extra money, and especially for affordable housing. And what happens is you wind up resulting with some comfort issues. And there's systematic problems like in our system when we turn heat over normally in our buildings because of what we're used to buildings performing like. That need to be corrected on that. Like you don't necessarily want to turn the heat over October 1st because that building is going to stay warm. And then there's design issues that need to be considered. What type of terminal units you're using, how you zone the building is very, very important and to maintain occupant comfort. And so we've had several projects now that are up and running with VRF, and we have some really good lessons learned to share and some design advice. We haven't solved every issue, but so I'm looking forward to sharing some of that stuff and having that conversation with the happy hour group.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think there are going to be a lot of grateful recipients of this information for sure. So thank you. Is there anything else you want to share before we close?
I don't think so. I'm so glad it's 2021.
I know, me too. This is a crazy. We're recording on January 6th. This is a crazy day. This is a crazy day. So
I know. I have all like 3 different news channels up. I've been watching it.
I know. Indeed. Yeah, me too. I'm glad it's 2021. And thanks again, Lois. It's so great to talk to you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Zach.
And that was Lois Arena. Great chat there, Zach. And as you mentioned in the intro, Lois has already appeared on the Passive House Global Happy Hour, and she's going to be returning on the 20th, which would be fantastic to go into more detail of some of those issues that you talked about. Any particular outtakes, or what did you take out of that interview?
Well, I thought, the tension that she alluded to with she's at the vanguard of practice in North America, and I think you could say kind of globally as well. So she's constantly coming. She and her team are grappling with new passive house problems.
Mm-hmm.
And those new passive house problems are also sometimes new to the certification bodies, so new to PHI and new to FIAS, and raise new questions and challenges, where clarification is needed, and all sorts of kind of scientific work is required by these certification bodies to figure out how to kind of like, okay, how do we grapple with this, with this, all this new stuff? And I think that because she's in that position of being the first on so many different kinds of projects, that process can be frustrating, I think, because it's inherently, it takes time.
Like a passive house commercial kitchen.
Right.
I don't even
exactly.
know how you do that.
Yeah. A lot of creativity with range hoods.
Yeah.
Big range hoods and grease and all sorts of
excess
stuff.
heat.
Yeah, right. So I think that it's just another. I mean, we're always exploring, right, what this transition entails of moving from conventional building to high performance and building a passive house, and she raises one of those kind of the sticking point and she's right there. If there's anybody who's going to feel that pain, it's somebody like who's like Lois, who's the first at all these different things.
Yeah, and she's been the first for a while, as a lot of people have in this community. They're pushing the boundaries, which is exactly what we need people to do. And it is hard work, and it does make things easier for those to follow in behind. I think what was really interesting is that she does have some of that sense of commercial reality, having done her own even small projects back in the recession when she was flipping houses. You get a real sense of things like cash flow, and even if you're not running a traditional business, you're dealing with those financial issues. And when you couple that with the scientific rigor that is involved in the testing and the certification process, there can be a challenge there. Not just in, and what you're saying is that she's not just dealing with certifying individual buildings. She's thinking about the certification process of a whole new type of building, and I get the sense that she's frustrated sometimes by the speed that it takes some of the institutions and organizations that she relies on to go at the same speed, or go at a speed which she likes. And I guess builders grapple with this with other consenting bodies and local councils, local jurisdictions as well. And we're often guilty of complaining that they move at very slow speeds. I do understand, though, the tension there, that you've got to have that scientific rigor, and that takes time to get other people to look at these issues and consider them. And we need that, because otherwise we can't just be accepting things because then that devalues the rating. But I also can understand the need to move nimbly and to be responsive to those needs in a timely manner, so that we can kind of move the industry forward. So it is an interesting challenge.
Yeah. And for the folks who come after people like Lois, take a moment and, maybe raise a glass to the,
absolutely.
the trailblazers.
Yeah.
And there's a benefit. I mean, she also spoke to the fact that she's got a lot of, there's a cadre of developers that she works with now who have done these projects, and she's able, because of the learning, that whole learning curve law, the experience curves, the cost of those second, third, 10th projects are lower. So she's, they're able to offer discount for repeat business, because there is a tangible savings involved in doing it the second time and third time, et cetera.
Yeah, I guess, in some ways it's not even a discount. It's more just pricing things more confidently, knowing how long things are going to take, rather than overpricing or having to spend a lot longer, or even redoing work that didn't work out as planned the first time round. To that point, I think that's certainly the real benefit that I see week in and week out at the Global Happy Hour is that network that's being created of people who are sharing ideas of specific projects, how they've overcome these challenges. And it's great, not just for sharing that knowledge, but also for people making connections. And in those breakout times, I know that people are connecting with, architects are finding contractors, and contractors are finding specialist engineers that have often solved a very similar problem to what they're currently facing, and that really helps the industry as well, and build, I guess, comradeship, but also just sharing of knowledge to speed things up.
Yeah, that's a really gratifying piece of this work is to see that happen, and people bring their expertise and experience to the happy hour. And it also becomes a launching pad for other endeavors that to share knowledge.
Yep.
We're just talking with a partner about potentially creating a detail library of go-to passive house detailing solutions on the accelerator site. And this is, an organization that's already done a whole bunch of detailing work, has this kind of treasure trove of information, and we to kind of get this launched. And it's all thanks to the conversations that we're having on the forum, at the happy hour. So it's, that's what this is all about. That's why I think that's why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
All the work that we do is to help grease the skids toward this transformation we all want to see happen super fast.
Yeah. So well done. It's great to have people like Lois out there. So well done for connecting with her, having her on the accelerator, and getting her back to share some more insights. And I just want to acknowledge people like Lois and others who have taken that leap, convinced their bosses to spend that significant investment in both time and money getting trained in the first place in this crazy new thing that you haven't done any work in the field of passive house before. It's easy for us to think, well, it's obvious now, but looking back, if you'd never done one of these projects and you're having to convince a firm or convince clients that, no, this is a worthwhile thing for me to spend a couple of weeks getting trained on this certification process and doing it out of town, it's a big call back then, and it's too easy to take that for granted now. So I really take my hat off to trailblazers like Lois.
Me too.
And look forward to hearing more from her and others at upcoming global happy hour events. And we're kicking off back into 2021 with a few other events.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week on Tuesday in North America, that's Wednesday in the South Pacific.
Yep.
We're going to have at the Passive House Accelerator Construction Tech Tuesday, we'll have Adam Romano, also from Stephen Winter Associates, who has been a trainer for many passive house practitioners for a long time in New York. He's going to be on talking about domestic hot water systems in passive house. And then the next day, for the Global Passive House Happy Hour, we'll have Killian Collins, who we had on the podcast a few weeks ago, join us to present about this amazing project in the Solo Valley Passive House project. It's mass timber, zero carbon, and totally beautiful. So he'll be presenting about that on Wednesday, North America, Thursday, South Pacific. And what else? And then we have all sorts of, everybody's kicking back into gear for events. So NAPHN does a lunchtime special with Kevin Levinson, or Ken Levinson, sorry. And that the first one for 2021 will be on Thursday, January 14th. And then we have trainings from Passive House Canada, Building Energy Exchange, FIAS, all sorts of stuff. So I will share all of that in show notes. Every week we do a Passive House Weekend Preview article that includes this kind of info.
Cool. Yeah, and down here in the Southern Hemisphere, we've got a good response from Daniel Kress's interview episode from last week, and I know they're kicking off with training in Australia. The Australian Passive House Association's just posted some dates for their Passive House training, And I know that Dr. Cara Rosemeyer is getting filled up with bookings for Passive House Academy, New Zealand training as well. So plenty of opportunities to get trained. And I know this is quite a good time as well. A lot of people have a slowish start to the year sometimes, with contractors being away. So get in there, get yourself trained up if you're not already. That just about wraps it up, I think, for this week, Zach.
I think so. Happy 2021.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, and we'll see you back on the Passive House podcast next week.
All of the work of Passive House Accelerator, including the Passive House podcast, would be impossible without the support of our sponsors. So we want to take a moment to give a hearty thank you to our sponsors. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you.